Hi, this is Coach Shaun in your corner today. I'm thinking of this quote or Bible verse. King Solomon said this. He said, "To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven." That's in Ecclesiastes 3:1. This has been a quote that has kind of really settled into my heart over the years, because when I was young, I didn't understand these things and began to chase. You're chasing things and you can't understand why are things going wrong. It just had to be running at a million miles an hour all the time. And how can something change so dramatically? How can things not fit right now? Why is everything slowing down? Why are people not cooperating? Why am I not reaching my goals? And there is seasons, and that was I stumbled across this verse, and I really pondered about it, and I thought to myself, this is really what it's about. And I began to study this. I began to study it in my children's lives, and began to really speak to them about this and remind them of these things, that there are seasons in our life. Last rugby season, being a college coach in a college rugby team, I have new players, as I've mentioned before. I have new players coming all the time. So every new season, there's a bunch of players arrive, and depending on how the club recruits, depends on how many players and who I get coming. And last season, we had a bunch of guys arrive, and I looked at this group and I thought, we can really do something here. Some of them were ex-football players, some of them were really athletic, and you can tell, and with a bit of work, I could tell that we could have a winning team here. And I, maybe falsely, under false ideas, I thought to myself, this is going to be a winning season. This is going to be a cup season for us, a championship season for us. We are going to crush it this season, because we've got some really good players here, and if they come with the right attitude, I can teach them the skills. Well, it turns out that as time progressed, we lost a lot of those players, which I know happens, but I don't want to happen. Obviously, as a coach, I want to keep them all and see a really great team, see them really mesh as a great team together, working together and going out and winning tournaments, winning games and winning tournaments. But it turns out that it wasn't to be. And so by the time we finished like the conditioning part of the season, which is the latter part of the year, we have like September, October, November, August, September, October, November, and we had some unofficial tournaments that we played in. But by the end of that time, by November, we had lost a lot of these promising players, and I could see some of my team players were feeling a little dejected in the whole process. And I said to them, okay, you know what we've got to do is refocus our attention here. Obviously, what we've got is not a championship season, but we've got a building season, and we've got to recognize the right season we're in, because every season has a purpose, and that purpose demands certain application, certain implementation, a certain focus, a certain alteration, that it's going to require something different of us than what we thought. And even though we lost a lot of players, we did keep a lot of new players. And so I was excited to see those players developing the skills that they needed to move forward. And they were really committed and and are committed to the game, and I'm going to probably have them another 1 or 2 seasons with me in the club. So that is really exciting, and I knew that if they stay and they stay dedicated, then I can build with them in this season. And so I recognized that, and so we began to build on team. I didn't focus so much on the winning aspect, but on team building. And in fact, I got into their faces the one day because they were so focused on winning that they became individuals. And rugby is not a game that you can play individually. You cannot play as an independent. You cannot be a lone wolf on the field. No one player wins a game. And I had to confront them a little bit after that and say, we are a team and we play as a team. You've got to build as a team. This is the time that you build team now. And they made that a correction. They made that adaptation. And so we didn't have a great season when it comes to winning tournaments, but we had a great season building team and for them realizing the concept of team. And that's the same that we have in our lives as well. We've got to recognize the how to navigate the different transitions or seasons in our life. We've got to recognize when there's time to build, when there's time to plow, when there's time to sow, when there's time to harvest. Not every season of your life is a harvesting time. Not every season of your life is a growing time, but you can grow in every season. And every season has a purpose. So we've got to realize that every purpose has a process. And that process is what defines the outcome of your season. And so we shouldn't demean or despise the season that we're in. Recognize what season you're in and do what's necessary in that season. Is it to bring together? Is it to consolidate? Is it a time to strategize? Is it a time to build? Is it a time to grow? Is it a time to learn? Is it a time just to recognize what's happening, be aware of what's happening around you? One of the I'm going to rabbit trail here, but one of the things that I noticed about in executive coaching, those seasons oftentimes come in executives' lives, the C-suite kind of leader, that they need to recognize when they need to build self-awareness about their leadership. And now there becomes this internal growth before there's external growth. There's an internal strategic focus before there's an external strategic focus. And so we've got to recognize those seasons and navigate those seasons. So the first thing we have to do is we have to recognize there are seasons, recognize what season we are in, recognize what is the purpose of that season, recognize that we don't really have control over seasons. I don't understand why oftentimes, but I know my life is in His hands. My life is in God's hands and my seasons are in His hands. And, so a farmer can sit on his porch, but he cannot on his deck, and he can look at the fields, but he can't make the ground prepare itself any faster than it can prepare. So he's got to get out, he's got to plow, and then he's got to sit and wait for sowing time. And then he sows the seed, and then he's got to wait. There's nothing he can do to change the season of growth. You can't hasten it. You can't extend it. It is what it is. It's the season. And when the time comes for harvest, that's the harvesting season. He's got to get in and he's got to harvest. Otherwise, he loses the harvest. If he doesn't recognize the season, he can lose his crop. And life is the same way. We've got to realize we cannot rush a season, but we also shouldn't waste a season. You've got to do what you've got to do in your season. An example for me is always the life of Joseph. And he gets put into this situation that I don't think a lot of people understand. He was alone. He was missing his family. He was away from his culture, his people. And now, at first off, he's in a pit. Then he's in a slave in a politician's house. He's running the show. You know, he's faithful to doing what he needs to do. And in that season, he implemented, I believe, all the things his dad had taught him about management principles, and so he could manage the whole household. And everything was working. And, you know, the story, you know, the politician's wife wanted him, and he ran away. I can't do this, you know, a principle he had learned. And it seems like, okay, his life is over. He ends up in a dungeon. Prison in those days weren't the ideal place, and he ends up in a dungeon. But he stays faithful even in that season. He didn't waste it. He kept applying himself. He kept using his gift. He kept using his ability, his gifting to interpret dreams. And he didn't know when that was going to end. He meets two people, and this is the thing, is in your season, although he was alone and out of his fishbowl in that sense, he was out of his cultural realm, out of his area that he understood and knew. He was now in this whole new, and that, you know, and it goes from the politician's house to rich businessman politician to a dungeon. But he ends up becoming nearly in charge of the prison or the dungeon, because of his ability to manage things and his ability to apply himself wherever he was, in whatever season he was in. And so he doesn't waste that time. And even though he's away from the relationships he knows, loves, you know, treasures and values, but new relationships come to him. And he applies his gifting faithfully to them as well, which was the porter, the baker, and the porter to Pharaoh. And he interprets both their dreams. They leave, and it takes another 2 years before he actually even gets back to having, or not getting back, but where his desire and his request is actually now brought before Pharaoh, which is, you know, I want to be set free. And he goes through that process, but he meets these two men, and, you know, in your season, you may find there's new relationships come. You sow into their lives, you put in what you have, you develop a new relationship. You never know what's going to come out of that. Both didn't work for 2 years. One didn't work, and the other one got him promoted. And he didn't realize what he was aiming for. He just wanted to go home to his dad. But there was another destination, another outcome for his season, which was to become the most powerful man in the known world. He would be equivalent to the economic secretary of the known world. He saved the world actually from famine at that point in time. But he didn't know that up until half an hour, 30 minutes before he's appearing before the king. He had no idea what his destiny would be. And so the whole process brought him to this purpose. And so every season, you've got to understand, is a process for an outcome. And you work with the people that you have within your life. Don't do your season alone. And that's kind of my last point. So don't do your season alone. Work with your team. Build, there's time to build your team. Time to solidify the relationships. Not demanding, commanding, but with understanding, with consideration, really connecting with your team to solidify it. We cannot walk alone through the world. It's really, really hard. Now, there may be seasons that you feel isolated. And there may be seasons that you feel independent. There may be seasons that you feel alone. And that's okay. Don't despise that. I've had those, where you just feel like I don't fit anywhere. But to be honest, now that I'm older, I really don't care about trying to fit anymore. I think some leaders or some men work so hard at trying to fit in that they cannot stand out. They cannot stand out with their own convictions, with their own values, with their own perspective, with their own paradigm, with their own courage. They're trying to placate everything so nicely and be so kind to everybody else that they never, ever stand out with their own conviction. And we've got to be people of conviction to survive the seasons of life. So I really want to encourage you is be aware of the seasons. Going with my son through that season, and it wasn't the end of the story. I'll probably tell you about that sometime. But going through that was a season, and maybe next video I will talk about how his previous season prepared him for that season, because I teach him that, because I talk to him about that and emphasize that in his life, he recognized that and used it effectively. So if anything from this video I want to tell you is be aware of your seasons. Discern your seasons. Navigate them properly. Don't despise them. Don't waste your time in them. Realize they have got an outcome. And one season is kind of a means to an end, and the end is the next season. One season prepares you for the next season of your life. Prepares you for the next season of your life. All right. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I'm Coach Shaun. I'm in your corner. I want to encourage you to overcome and navigate and get through life seasons effectively, successfully. You can thrive. You don't just have to survive. All right, until next time, thanks for hanging with me.